just so, we're really blessed, I think, to do what we do in healthcare. So what I'm going to talk to you about, if you don't mind, over the next 8 or 9 hours, we'll see how we go, is talk to you about a concept that, it's something that came fully formed into my head. You know, sometimes that you've been kind of marinating something in your head, and I teach deep thinking and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I've been talking to a group of older people's doctors, nurses, allied health professionals. And we're talking about deep thinking, and we're talking about valuing patients' time. And as I'll unpack, valuing patient time is the most important currency in healthcare. I'm talking about this and that we don't waste, not wasting time. Because in order to value patient time, we have to value staff time as well. I'm talking about this, and then suddenly this thought turned up in my head, fully formed, about the last 1,000 days. But altogether, what we get on this out is about 30,000 days. Tumbleweed goes across the table and we decide to process that thought. But that's it, that's kind of life, isn't it? That's 30,000 days is the rough span of people's lives. But what we tend to do at the same time is every day, we kind of, this time next year, broadly, most people will do the same thing. We tend to do the same, we get up at, we tend to have the same breakfasts, we tend to, sort out, the sort of clothes, we tend to sort out sort of food, and sort of do some sort of same thing, don't we? And part of the reason we do that is the brain's job is to keep us alive. That's kind of number one thing, keep you alive. And subconsciously the brain is thinking, right, you survived yesterday, now do the same thing, you'll see how you go. And isn't that true? We kind of, this is evidence-based thinking here. But that's kind of what its role is largely about. The trouble is, by doing the same old thing and never challenging ourselves, what we have is a life as what's being called a daily blur. Is any of you surprised that it's October already? I'm kind of waiting, I'm kind of just about getting my head around it should be April, because it feels like it whizzes by. And then what happens is people suddenly find themselves much, much later. So really, to my mind, it's time to wake up and think about doing things in a different kind of way, that we challenge the orthodoxies and we disrupt our own thinking. And people say people don't like change. I think people don't mind change, but they do mind being changed. Can I just, how many here are parents, just as a thought? Oh, a small forest. And when you think about it, that is one of the biggest change in a person's life. And when you think, it's not exactly an appealing thought. You're dealing with toxic waste, ruins your sleep patterns, and yet people rush to it, and they particularly like the training bit. And it's an extraordinary change, but it's about when people want something badly enough, they'll do it because it's about something that's intrinsic and it's within. And why does the last 1,000 days matter? If we have 30,000 days, why does the last matter? And this brings it back to the older people's physicians and nurses and allied health. And I work about 6 months of the year in Canterbury Health System, and it's one of the top 5 integrated health systems now in the world, alongside Jönköping in Sweden, Intermountain Health, and Kaiser Permanente in the United States, and Salford NHS Trust across the way in Manchester. And it struck me as this: if you are a white Englishman, you can expect to live to about the age of 79. And if you're a white English woman, you can expect to live to about the age of 83. But supposing you're a 76-year-old man or an 80-year-old woman, what have you got left? What you have left is 1,000 days. And I know that the longer we live, the longer we can expect to live. Once you get past the age of 10, you survive to childhood, life expectancy goes up. And there's good evidence that the people who have the most birthdays live longest. But what is QMC full of? It's full of people in the last 1,000 days, isn't it? It's full of people who are waiting. And it seems to me sometimes, I think we treat old people, as if they've got all the time in the world. In fact, to my mind, old people are in a hurry. And that is why what we do collectively has moral purpose. What we do collectively matters hugely, Because every day somebody spends in here longer than they must is stealing their time. Every hour they wait for TTOs or waiting for discharge paperwork, what's it doing? It's stealing their time. People waiting in an outpatient's department, people waiting in a GP practice, people waiting. And as lovely as we all collectively are, actually what's the right thing to do? And where would you want to spend your last 1,000 days? I'm guessing it wouldn't be here. It would be with the ones you love the most. It'd be the ones that you, and your home may be your home, or it could be the age residential care setting, but it is the place you call home. And the other thing around 1,000 days, and it's the counterpoint of patient well-being experience. It's also about staff well-being and experience. Because as I said, in order to value patient time, it's important to value staff time as well, so that we're not wasting time running around, chasing stuff, hunting for stuff, looking for things, waiting for somebody to and I would be rubbish if I was with the CQC, because I kept going around this place all morning thinking, oh my God, you're brilliant. Oh my God, you're fantastic. How are you doing all this? This is an extraordinary place. I'd be rubbish with a stick, You're just extraordinary place. And I came here 13 years ago to do a bed review when now Sir Stephen Moss was the Director of Nursing. And I'll tell you one thing has not changed at all about Queen's Medical Centre. It hasn't changed, apart from fabric. The building is this. I keep getting people who keep smiling, and there's this tangible pride in this place. I've gone to some organisations, some hospitals, and you go into town, you can see the toxic green glow over the town. That'll be the hospital. You haven't got that here. You've got a good place with good people and a good spirit. And one day, please God, all of us will be that 80-year-old woman or that 76-year-old man, and we'll look back on our days. Because John Steinbeck, he said in Grapes of Wrath, far away in the future, the 1,000 lives we could have led are waiting for us to show up. And when we get there, it'll only have been one of them. And every one of us in this room could have made different choices. We could have worked in things that wouldn't probably be as hard as they are. We wouldn't work the hours we work. We wouldn't be taken away from our families the way we often are. But we've made a choice to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Please God, when we're looking back on our 1,000 days, when we're that 76-year-old man, that 80-year-old woman, I think what we'll be able to all do is say, I may not have got rich or famous, but I mattered. I mattered to my community, I mattered to my profession, I mattered to my family. That, I think, means we've had a life that mattered. And on the 30,000 days we get on this earth, and do you know what? We don't know when that 1,000 days will start, any one of us. We really don't. But at least we can all know that what we do means something. And what we've got, I think, with the 1,000 days is a why. Because everyone knows what they do. And if you look about how we frame stuff, these three men, they were laying bricks. And the first one was asked, what are you doing? And he said, look, what I'm doing is I'm laying these darn bricks. And the second man was asked, what are you doing? He says, I'm feeding my family. And the third, doing exactly the same task, he was asked, he said, I'm part of a team building a cathedral so that people can come and worship their God and feel at peace. Have any of you been or seen that church, that cathedral in Barcelona? That extraordinary building is like candle wax on steroids. And for hundreds and hundreds of years they've been building that thing. And there's master craft stonemasons who would have started their lives knowing they would never see the end, but they were part of something bigger and beautifuler and more extraordinary there. What an extraordinary experience that would be, to know that. And to feel that actually the 1,000 days is about us building a cathedral of care. It's doing the right thing because it matters, because we've got a good why for what we do. And And Simon Sinek, he, TED.com, Technology and Design, his TED talk, about 2009 I think it was, it's now been seen around 27 million times. And his TED talk is how do leaders inspire action? And it's certainly well worth a view. 18-minute talks, and they're just extraordinary. And his went viral for a while, because what he does, if you think about it, every organization can tell you what they do. Most of them can tell you how they do it, but very few can tell you why. And he gives the example of, say, a Dell computer or Acer or HP, whatever they are. And what's the typical way they'll sell a computer? What they'll say is, oh, well, you know, what we have is this amazing new computer. It's absolutely fantastic. Got all these benefits, there's all these clever things. We've got great engineers. Would you like to buy one? And most people think, it's just a grey box. I'm not that bothered. Whereas Apple, on the other hand, they take a very different approach. What they do is they start with why. How do they pitch it? They will do things like, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in making something that works for you. How we do it was we have engineers who work and think to make a life easier, to open up a whole world of the internet and a phone and music with a stroke of your fingers. And what it's called is an iPhone. Can you see how it's so different when you start with why? Because it's about what people believe, and if people believe what you believe, they'll follow you. And think about Martin Luther King. What did he do? You know, he didn't turn up and say, hey, I've got a 10-point plan. He said, I have a dream. And the people who were there, they were there because they believed what he believed. And you know, he talked about how, you know, the mighty streams of consciousness rolling down the mountains. He talked about how he looked forward to a day on the 28th of August in 1963 when he stood in Washington. And he talked about, you know, he looked forward to a day when his four young daughters could play, you know, black daughters could play with 4 young white children, and they wouldn't be judged on the colour of their skin, but on the content of their character. He talked about how the arc of history is long but bends towards justice. He talked about how he may not get there with you. He almost prophesied his own life being taken one April evening in 1968, but he knew he was part of something bigger, which was civil rights. And it started with an introvert. And this introvert, back in 1955, she was on a bus. And she was going on that bus in Montgomery, Alabama. And after a couple of stops, the bus driver, James Blake, he said, get back to the back of the bus. Why was that? Because she was black. And this woman, Rosa Parks, said on that day, do you know what? No, I'm not going to. She said later, you know, it wasn't that I was tired, I was tired of, I'd had enough. That's why I said no. And she got arrested. And within hours, where she sat down, there was hundreds of people marching. And they were marching because actually they believed what she believed. That it was not okay to be picked on because of the colour of your skin. And they believe, and one of the people involved was a young black minister. His name was Martin Luther King. And where she sat down, within a few years, there was hundreds marching. A few more years, there was hundreds of thousands marching. And on the 28th of August 2008, exactly 45 years to the day, another young black man, where she sat, Martin Luther King marched, Barack Obama could run all the way to the White House. So never underestimate your power and your impact. If you think about it, you know, you look at the chaos theory, James Gleick, and he talks about, you know, those big hurricanes, gales, winds, right down to the beating of a butterfly's wings. And the theory is that the beating of a butterfly's wings can have enough of effect over time to cause a hurricane. And while not all of us can be hurricanes, every single one of us can be a butterfly. Every one of us matters, makes a difference. Can make it be the difference that makes the difference. And it's about the starfish, because you've got the person throwing the fish in and people say, what's the bother? It's
tens of thousands of starfish. Why would you keep throwing them in? What much difference does it make? And the guide says, it makes a difference to that one. So your role is to keep making a difference one by one, and we create a social movement with one heart and one mind at a time. People change and then organizations change in that order. We talk about hearts and minds, and we do so because it is in that order. And if we value patient time, because our time is busy and important, but our patient's time, if we treat it as sacred, we won't be talking about targets and performance. What we will talk about the professional standards we need to reach, the things that are done because it is the right thing to do. And we will be able to eliminate all that needless waiting and all that needless harm, all that needless suffering, because actually we are part of something bigger than ourselves, because we've got a great why. Because one day we'll be in our last 1,000 days, and we'll be able to say, I did my bit to make a difference. And whether you're at the start of your career, your mid-career, or like some of us who've got more days behind us than we have ahead of us, it's never too late to start. It's never too soon to make a difference. And it can start here, it can start now, it can start today. And the greatest Kiwi of all, you know, he had this to say. He was Edmund Hillary, and you know, people think, well, what can I do? You know, it's they that stop us. We've got all these organizations and all these things that prevent us. Actually, you know what? He had a wholly different way of looking at it. He said it's this. It's not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves. So thank you for your courtesy and your silence. I feel like saying, go in peace to love and serve. What I would love you to do, if you will, we have until about 12:30, but I think that's PM, not AM. Would you have a chat among yourselves for a couple of minutes? We'll just hear, what could you start to do? And the trick is this, don't do this, do that. What could you start to do that would make it better? How do you make it better to make someone's life easier, including your own? And you know what, it's not a resources thing. It's not a money thing. It's a people thing. It's a belief thing. It's a commitment. Because as Nietzsche said, people will put up with any what if they have a good why. So if that's I hope, a good why, what and how are you going to do to start making it better here? Discuss. And we'll get feedback from you why.